What's up, Scrapyard? I've been receiving a ton of positive feedback on my informational videos, so I wanted to expand that horizon just a little bit, briefly give you guys tips on how to improve as a controller player. This video is specific for controller players on console or PC, but my M&K plebs out there might be able to learn a thing or two from this video, so stick around and watch. Without further ado, let's get it. Bam ba bam 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 ba bam 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 ba bam 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 ba bam bam. Welcome back. I'm gonna shoot for like 10 tips. Again, these tips are for controller players, but many things can be learned from this video. The first tip is your settings. Rule number 1, figure out a settings that works for you and stick with it. Rule number 2, stop copying other people's settings. Everybody's brain's different, everybody's reaction time is different. It's futile to try to copy someone else's settings. As you guys know, I play on 6.6 and played on 7.6 for 3 years. Even though I don't play it, I recommend a 4.3/4.4 sensitivity. And I also recommend classic input. Although I told you guys not to copy people's settings, 4.3/4.4 sensitivity with classic input accounts for about roughly 90% of pro controller players. There is a reason why they use that. I personally advise against ALC settings. The reason for that being is that they're complex. The majority of players don't completely understand them. The one thing that I've seen the most in my experience with Apex, a person that uses ALCs might have one bad game, and they immediately go to their ALCs and start trying to tweak things. In a game that's filled with variables, you have to give yourself a constant. Find settings that work with you and stick to it. For the last part of this tip, we'll talk about FOV. I recommend a field of view of 90 or greater. I use max 110. It allows me to see more on my peripheries. The more that you can see in front of you, obviously the better. For the second tip, this one goes out to all my console players. Please invest in a better setup. Stop playing on a television. Bigger is not better in gaming. You only need to invest in a 60Hz monitor for console. You can find them for $100 or less. The reason is because monitors have a higher refresh rate and less input delay. This allows you to perform at the most optimal level. No more TV audio, please. Go buy you a $40 over-the-head headset. You could ignore every other tip that I give, but if you listen to this tip, your gameplay will improve tenfold. It's that simple. Better setup means better gaming. For the third tip, we have this idea called centering. This is something that a lot of controller players are poor at. This means keeping your crosshair at the chest height of an enemy at all times, so that when an enemy does appear, you don't have to readjust your aim at all. You just point and shoot. I've seen a lot of players not center their crosshair, rather deviating it just slightly above or slightly lower than the center line. That now creates an unnecessary adjustment for your crosshair, and that right there can mess up your shots. Keep your crosshair at center mass at all times. The fourth tip will revolve around movement. Micro versus macro movement. You should be spending more of your time perfecting the little movement things, such as basic armor swaps. I'll link a video in the description that teaches you how to armor swap while moving for controller, simple wall jumps, timing your slides correctly to avoid dead slides, evasive maneuver tactics, stuff like that. That stuff's important. What's not important are the macro movements that are so glamorized nowadays. The tap strafes, the super glides, and whatever else Fade and Ecstasy has been teaching you. They're able to get away with that because they're at the top of their game. You're not. Learn the basics and fundamental movements beforehand, and focus more on your aim than those fancy movements that everybody loves to watch. Because I promise you, in higher lobbies, you will be getting one clip still. Those movements become extraneous at higher levels, and they rarely work against a good player. But focus on the micro movements, but more so focus on your aim and IQ above everything. The fifth tip is how to warm up. I know a lot of you controller guys love to warm up in the firing range. That is the most ineffective thing that you could do. Let's talk about physics real quick. Think of the firing range as a vacuum. Space devoid of any particles that exert any type of force within that area. Firing range is very one-dimensional. You can shoot stationary targets all day long. But when you step into a game where there are many forces and variables exerted on you, you'll find that the firing range is inconsequential to your improvement as a player. Yeah, it can get the blood flowing, but I've rolled thousands of players that spend hundreds of hours in the firing range because I warm up where it matters. In-game in a public match. I will say that the best place to warm up is in arenas, and I hate that mode. But when we're talking about improving your aim, practicing with certain weapons, being able to pick exactly the weapon that you want to improve with, and shoot real moving players in real time, there's really no better place to warm up. The sixth tip is hip firing. Start hip firing more often. I played Call of Duty my whole life where hip firing is not a big thing. Same with Rainbow Six Siege. Just never really found myself hip firing in those games. So when I first came to Apex, I never hip fired. It wasn't until Season 3 did I start hip firing more. Now I've perfected it. Hip firing is important because it increases your strafe speed. If you're fighting a 1v1 and the person is within 10 feet of you, you should always be hip firing. Your strafe speed is faster, therefore it's harder for you to be shot at. That right there is going to help you win more of your 1v1s on controller. The seventh tip is going to be crouch spamming. Stop doing it, bro. We don't have a one-shot mechanic in Apex like they do in Rainbow Six Siege. There is zero need to excessively crouch spam. In fact, in my level right now, I very rarely crouch spam. Crouch spamming too much can mess up your shots, so I would recommend not doing it all than doing it. The eighth tip has to do with consciousness. Being present-minded in the game, not only thinking about your moves, but the enemy's moves as well. anticipating what the enemy might do beforehand, and then building a game plan or a strategy around that. But also, be more conscious of what your thumbs are doing. You need to have complete and utter control with your thumbs if you want to have good aim on controller. Sure, your aim assist is going to help a little bit, but aim assist isn't aimbot. You still have to put in a lot of effort to get your aim good. Now for the 10th tip, let's talk about recoil smoothing. M&K players have their jitter aim. Us controller players have what's called recoil smoothing. That's just simply moving your left analog stick left and right as you're shooting. So pretty much strafe while you're shooting, don't just stand still. And this will actually smoothen your recoil to the point where, you don't have any recoil. And that's why players like myself get accused of cheating all the time, because my aim is so damn good, and we got John from the block only using his right thumb on his right analog stick to control his aim. Recoil control will happen with your right stick. Recoil smoothing will happen with your left stick. You need to utilize both of them at the same time while you're shooting to improve your accuracy. For the 11th tip, we have something that's called ADS spam. Most people ADS with L2 or LT if you're an Xbox nerd. You typically want to do this at medium distant ranges, where they're too far away to be hip firing, but they might be too close to be ADSing with like a 2x or a 3x scope. Spamming that L2 button, not a lot, but enough, will increase your strafe speed, much like hip firing does, but because you're entering in and out of ADS, it actually focuses up more of your shots. So you get the benefits of a faster strafe speed, but also the benefit of more accurate shots. And if you've watched my videos, you'll see me do this often. And for the 12th tip, we'll talk about playing claw or buying a modded controller. If you want to be the best version of yourself on controller, you have to have either one of them. I play claw. I've never bought a modded controller in my life. Modded controller, by the way, are things like Scuff, Battle Beavers, etc. Those are used by many because they have back buttons on the back of the controller that you can press without lifting up your thumbs off the thumbstick, which is why playing claw is a perfectly fine alternative. Because in an FPS game, if you're not moving, you're dead. And if you play on a regular controller without claw, say if I want to switch weapons, I have to pick up my right thumb off the thumbstick to press triangle and then move my thumb back onto the thumbstick. Sure, you can do that pretty fast, but there's now a period of time where you're not aiming. And same thing with your left thumb, there'll be a period of time where you're not moving. Playing claw when it comes to healing and when it comes to switching weapons will keep both of your thumbs on the thumbsticks so that you're always either moving or aiming. And that's kind of like those micro movements that I've talked about earlier. My movement and aim is fluid and crisp as hell as a result. Start trying to play claw, and if you can't, go save up for a modded controller. For the 13th tip, let's talk about how to improve your IQ in the game. This is a very complex tip, and I could make a whole video about this. But point blank period, if you want to improve your IQ in the game, play the game without audio. Don't do it in a rank match, do it in a pub. Without audio, you are forced to rely on your instinct and knowledge of the game, and it's going to be very hard. But this is how I improve my game IQ and overall game awareness. Don't expect to win every game without audio, that's not the point. The point is to focus on the things that matter without the assistance of audio. For the 14th tip, communicate. Learn how to communicate more concisely and more effectively with your teammates, whether they're your friends or randoms. People can only see what's in front of them. It's impossible to see everything. So communicate to your teammates things they may not see, and this can help you win more of your team fights. And for the 15th tip, follow Scrappy. Follow my TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, Scrappy on all three of those platforms. Follow me on Twitch, my name is Scrappy on there. I give the best tips in the entire world, and I do it for free. The knowledge that I provide you guys for the game is something that pro players charge hundreds of dollars for, and I put you guys on game for the F-skis. The least you could do is follow me. I would greatly appreciate it. But yeah, those are the 15 tips on how to improve as a controller player in Apex Legends. If you guys learned anything new or found this informational, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And let's get to 20,000 subs. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys next time. Bam 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 bam. Bam 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 bam. Bam 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 bam. Bam 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 bam